Okay, we good?
Nope, live in 5, 4, 3, 1.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the last meeting of the Environment Subcommittee for March, at least. Thanks also for being here on relatively little notice.
4.
Whoops.
Sorry, go ahead. That was
Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, so and thanks, Kristen, for putting together the agenda. We are going to defer the composting bills until the end of the agenda because those bills will require some updating and discussion. The others, hopefully, not so much. So, Kristen, you want to start with SB 171?
Sure. SB 171 relates to public participation. It's a departmental bill. It essentially is allowing certain public hearings and meetings to be held using teleconference or internet-based conferencing technology, unless an in-person meeting is specifically required by federal law or is requested by a person.
Right. So this was straightforward, no opposition. I mean,
Correct.
makes sense. Any questions about this bill?
There's no cross file for this bill?
It's a departmental. They're usually not cross-filed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Delka Gilchrist.
So this is Tyler's MDE bill.
Tyler, are you here?
I am, and yes, it is.
Okay.
So right now, when you hold like public hearings, do you hold those across the state if they're in person?
Yes.
And this bill allows you to do what?
So this bill would allow us to hold a virtual hearing instead of a in-person hearing. But if anybody requests an in-person hearing, we're going to hold that in-person hearing. And so,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
easy enough.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
so this is for permits, right?
Yes.
Hearings for permits. And so how would, I guess those are publicized. I'm just wondering how people would know to request an in-person if they needed that. Because I'm just thinking about areas where there may not be, as much internet access.
Sure. So they're, online, they're in the newspaper, they get mail notifications for some. We do try to have a fair amount of outreach for our public hearings.
And how much in advance do they need to request it to be in person?
So it would be, in the same time frame as requesting the public hearing to take place. And so it's usually a couple weeks in advance.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns about the bill? All right. Does someone want to make a motion?
Move favorable.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Now, what are we voting on? I'm sorry, I got
That's
here
okay.
late.
SB 171. Departmental bill. Do you have Charles, any questions about it?
Well, I heard about the public hearings and this, that, and the other, and MDE does a great job with that, with 45 days notice and things, and they do it very well on a lot of issues, so I'm comfortable.
Okay. All right. Let's do the yays and nays again. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, bill passes. Thank you. Okay, let's move to SB 348, the cross-file for the Conservation Finance Act. So, Kristen, I know this needs an amendment to conform to the House version.
That's correct. So the House adopted an amendment that required MES to conduct a review of the pay for success contracts. And that language did not come over in the Senate bill.
Okay.
Move the amendment.
Move to conform.
Okay.
Second.
Thanks. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, so the bill as amended. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, bill as amended passes. Great. SB 354.
Can we go ahead?
Kristen,
So,
Bay Restoration Fund. Why don't you go ahead?
yeah. So the biggest piece of this bill, it's the one that prohibits MDE for funding to provide funding to the owner of a privately owned wastewater facility if the facility is not in compliance with its discharge permit. And then the Senate added language via floor amendment that would allow funding to be used if the project was for the privately owned wastewater facility that's received funding from the Bay Restoration Fund in fiscal year 2023 capital budget. Anyway, the language that came over from the Senate was intended to, I think, address one particular facility to so they wouldn't be ineligible for funding. I know that there was some problems with the Senate sponsor had mentioned that that language needed to be tweaked. And I'm just realizing that I don't think I handed out the new language. So let me pull that up. And then what the amendment is proposing to do is, let me see if I can. All right. I don't know why I can't open. So I might have to read this because I'm having issues with bringing up it, recognizing that particular screen to bring up. And you know what?
Well, Kristen, maybe.
Sorry, I didn't have the show all files toggled.
Okay.
Okay, so what this does is it's striking the floor amendment and instead would add uncodified language relating to the construction of the bill. And it basically would say this act may not be construed to apply to any privately owned industrial wastewater facility that is connecting to a publicly owned wastewater facility that has been awarded grant funding for that purpose from the Bay Restoration Fund in fiscal year 2023 capital budget or any preceding capital budget.
And Kristen, why?
So
What
there's,
were the
I don't
facts
have a
about this?
lot of the backstory,
Okay.
and perhaps Tyler can help in this. I don't want to put on the spot, but there is a facility in Western Maryland that has received funding, and Senator Edwards was, I think, wanted to have a language protecting the funding from the Bay Restoration Fund for that particular facility.
That's correct.
Towers, yeah, is there anything you can add to that or want to add to that?
Yeah, that was the correct understanding of the situation for the senator.
Okay. This was in Hancock, is that right? Is that where?
Yes, it's a cheese manufacturer.
Okay. Okay. How do folks feel about this amendment? Questions about it?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I guess my question is, what is the reason for exempting this facility, and what is the status of it, in terms of the discharge or whatever? Like, what is the current status of it? Is it in compliance, or, I mean, what? I guess I don't have enough information to really.
Sure. No, fair enough. Tower, do you have any, can you help with those questions?
So I'm not sure about their compliance status, but they are affected by the bill because they are a privately owned industrial wastewater facility. And so the new bill will not fund any industrial wastewater facilities.
Right. Right. Private, because it's privately owned and,
Yep.
Right. This one is well, okay. Maybe, how would Delegate Ruth want to see if we can, and Tower, if I could ask you, if you don't mind, if we could get some more information about this particular project. Would that be all right?
Sure. Yep, I can try.
That'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure we're not doing any harm to the bay or water quality in exemplary
So I
facilities.
guess, yes, so I guess Tower, a little bit more information about the project, if the facility has been in compliance previously.
And I would just add that this facility is connecting to a public system owned by the county and will be, and the county is still, I guess, subject to their permit limitations. But I can check on, I guess, the compliance of the county's facility because that's where the wastewater will be coming out of.
Great.
So I
thank
guess
you.
that's the relevant issue. Okay,
Right.
sure.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, so we'll hold that. SB 372, the cross-file to Delegate Stewart's coal tar bill.
Yeah, there's one difference. The Senate bill came over and it changed the concentration level that would apply in the bill. So the bill that we sent over was, well, they sent one over, it's 1% PAH is the threshold that the bill would apply to. And the Senate sponsor had mentioned yesterday that is similar to a standard that's been established in Howard County. And that and the Senate actually has also amended the House bill, has sent it over with that 1% content level. And I do know I had asked the House sponsor of the bill, and he is okay with that change.
Okay, and I'm sorry, you may have mentioned this, but how does that compare with the concentration in the House bill?
So it was a very, very low level, and the House bill was, I think, 0.001%. And then the Senate bill's at 1%.
But you say Delegate Stewart is okay with
He is
change.
okay. He's asked, I know he's been, I asked him directly about his bill, and I know he's hoping that the House concurs with the Senate amendments to his House bill.
Okay,
So what's before you, if you wanted to take the Senate's version, is there's no amendments. It came over with that 1%.
we would just approve it.
If
we want
that
to
was
approve
the
it
will
the
of
as
Senate
is.
bill.
subcommittee.
Right. What's that, Delegate Boyce?
We're conforming to the Senate bill with the
The
1%.
Senate bill is what's before us right now. We will be
Sorry.
hearing concurrence maybe either later today or tomorrow morning on the House bill, but right now
Got it.
we're talking about the Senate bill.
I'm sorry. Okay. So
It's okay.
yes. So the difference is that the percentage has increased to the 1% versus the 0.001%.
Correct.
Okay.
The Senate bill has that higher level.
Okay. Yeah, and as we said at the outset, Delegate Stewart can't be here, but he has told us that he's okay with the way the Senate bills come over, and presumably that's the way they'll be changing his bill in the Senate. Yeah, other questions about SB 372?
So is this an amendment that we're talking about here?
No, there's
No
no
amendments.
amendment. It's just that
That's
it's,
how it came to us. Okay.
yeah, that's right. So does anyone want to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to move the bill only because from what I understand, the House sponsor is okay with this.
And
Right.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further questions about the bill? Okay, everyone in favor, say aye.
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 All those who are opposed?
No.
Okay. All right, bill passes. Okay, SB 818, which I realize it's not in the same posture as our House bill. So 1200? Yeah,
1,200, that's correct.
Right.
And
So-
so
Yeah, go ahead.
the difference is, I think the intent of the Senate committee was to send it over. We were having similar discussions. Our committee just went a little further ahead and made some additional tweaks So I think most of it's really just technical terminology updates that are necessary to conform the two bills.
So you're saying those are technical terminology. So just be a matter of
That's my
conforming.
recollection. I didn't have a chance to take a closer review before this meeting, just for
Sure.
up in the day.
Okay.
But yeah, that's my understanding, that there was just really just a few like some references and some terminologies that needed updating.
Okay. So what we would need to do is to conform SB 818 to the way we passed out HB 1200. Does anyone want to make a motion to do that?
Yeah, I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman. But I'm
Okay,
not sure that that's, Kristen, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is what I'm saying. I believe the House bill version is the preferred version. And so in order to move Senate Bill 818 along, you would want to conform it to House Bill 1200 as passed by the House.
Okay, yeah, I make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You gotta
Aye.
have that.
Opposed? Okay. And Kristen, that's in terms of procedurally, we just, our approval of conforming it, we don't need to make any further motion, do we?
No, and so I will draft conforming amendments. I will say about this one, we don't have a revised fiscal note yet, so I'm not sure it'll get on tomorrow's voting list, but I will be watching to see what's coming out from across the street.
Okay,
I know they're working on it.
okay, great. SB 876, which was the cross file for HB 1201, which we passed out with amendments. So Kristen, you want to, I get, presumably 876 is as 1201 was originally, is that right?
That's correct. And so we had changed, kind of the direction of this bill. And let me bring it up, the third read version. And so this, instead of altering or creating the civil penalty surcharge, it would require the department to include oyster repletion projects in a supplemental environmental projects database. And then there was language added to prioritize those types of projects, involving oyster repletion in the county where an underlying water pollution violation occurred.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is someone from DNR here? Is this a DNR or an MDE bill?
It crosses, I mean, it deals with subject areas that overlap. I mean, we have the supplemental environmental project relating to, unpermitted discharge violations, which is something that comes under MDE's domain. But then, we're talking about oyster repletion. Certainly DNR would be the experts on that.
So, Tyler, so the House version was amended so that there was no penalties. We just said there was pollution in this area, so you ought to prioritize oyster replenishment in that area.
So the way that it would work is that MDE, if there is a unpermitted discharge, that we would, impose a penalty. When that penalty is, negotiated, or we work through that legal process, a SEP can be in lieu of or in addition to a penalty. And so
It's a supplemental environmental project.
Yes.
SEP. Yeah.
Sorry. And so this would, have MDE prioritize, encouraging that polluter to carry out a supplemental environmental project that would replete oysters in the area that was negatively affected.
This is the bill that we were called off the floor and we voted on in the old House chamber when we amended it, Mr. Chairman. Is that
Correct.
I can't remember.
Yep.
Kristen,
It
is that
was.
right? Yeah.
It's correct. Yep. He's correct.
And I remember thinking that the House amendment was a good idea. I mean, that's my memory. And it just said this is where the pollution occurred and the department should prioritize oysters there. And I think that was the House version. I see Delgado has his hand up.
Okay, yeah, Delgado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this Delegate Jacobs cross-file? I mean,
Yes.
and they in a similar posture as.
Well, we're
passed
proposing, what we would do is make it, would be to conform the Senate bill to HB 1201 as we passed it. Right now, I guess SB 876 is as it was originally introduced. So we would.
Well, I
conform it.
move to
Conform it.
into conform it, yes.
And
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. And Tara, remind us, I mean, with this conforming amendment, MDE's concerns were addressed, right?
Yes, yep, we're good now.
Okay. Any other questions about what we're proposing to do? SB 876? Okay, well, all those in favor of conforming it to 1201, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to composting. House Bill 184 has been in the committee for a while. And then we now have the Senate version here. Kristen, you want to explain, sort of remind us of the reason why we had held it and sort of where things are right now with the Senate bill?
Okay, so sure. So starting back, the reason this bill was held in the House was initially, this bill relates to on-farm composting. It would have MDE establish an exemption for certain materials being composted on a farm, allowing up to 40,000 square feet. We initially had received amendments from the Prince George's County delegation that conflicted with what the sponsor wanted to do, and we were trying to figure that out. We've since heard that the amended version of the bill, we didn't hear from Prince George's County delegation or their county executive office, but their soil conservation district did indicate to me that they didn't have any problems with Senate Bill 229, how it came over. And so what Senate Bill 229 does is that it provides relevant definitions in the bill. It provides a list of the types of materials that could be composted on a farm and not require a permit. It involves organic materials that are generated on site, which animal manure, which they're currently allowed to do, type 1 feedstock, which is like yard waste and others, some type 2 feedstock, which is like the food, organic food waste. There's a record keeping requirement. And then the facility would also have to meet any other condition for a permit exemption that would be specified by MDE and regulation. Now, the difference with this bill is that we did receive opposition on this bill from Bioenergy DevCo. And then MDE, I think on both bills, did express some concerns about the bill because basically it's expanding the footprint on which on-farm composting can occur. And so we've heard different feedback. I know that we've had some support indicating that they think that this is a good, useful thing for the environment. And then there's some concerns about this expansion would basically create a facility that didn't come under the regulations if it was on a farm, but if it wasn't on a farm, it would be subject to regulation. So I think there might be some advocates here that can speak more specifically to their concerns, but I think that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Before I ask Tower and if Emily Ranson is here, Emily to weigh in, any questions from subcommittee members? Okay, well, let's, Tower, you want to explain where you are with the Senate bill?
Sure. And so these regulations were, promulgated after a very intense stakeholder process that took quite some time. We feel that these facilities could be as large as other permitted commercial composting facilities in the state. And we would like them to also have that same permit as other industrial composting operations have in the state. We would be happy to, work with the stakeholders in the interim to talk more about, I guess, expansions or changes to the regs. I know that costs are a big concern, and we do try to work with our permittees to help them get coverage under our composting general permit. So you can be, whatever size you want to be and protect the environment doing it. But we really think that, more work could be put into this process, and just give us some more time to help us work it out with the stakeholders.
Okay, Delegate Boyce.
Sorry. So I just, I guess I should have waited for Emily to weigh in, but essentially so one of the biggest issues with composting is a space, or finding a space. So I guess and let me get this out. Would those who are doing on-farm composting be using or distributing the compost in the same way as an industrial site or a company would be distributing the compost?
If they get approval from MDA that it's a saleable material, then they would be, distributing through those same channels.
But again, but the farm would be using its own stuff. They wouldn't necessarily be taking materials from, local neighbors unless they have that kind of bartering, right? I mean,
They can under the bill.
Yeah.
Under the bill allows for offsite generations, for them to accept materials that were generated offsite.
accepted, but they're not charging a fee for it. So I pay for a service, for instance.
I think they can also there wouldn't be anything that would stop them from getting paid to take it.
This bill just doesn't address that part of the agreement.
Okay, I'll wait a.
Okay. See, Emily, do you want to weigh in?
Oh, Mr. Chairman,
Oh, yes, Delegate Gilchrist.
is this Senate Bill 348?
229.
Senate Bill. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, Emily, or I'm sorry, Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This doesn't affect anaerobic digestion or anything there, except in other compost materials that they're feeding into the feedstock for that.
Yeah, I don't think so. Kristen
This
or
is
Tyler?
particular to the composts.
Yeah, is that right, Tyler?
This would be specifically for on-farm composting facility.
Thank you.
Okay. Emily, do you want to weigh in, as I know you sent the subcommittee a couple hours ago an email in support?
Yeah, and so one of the things to keep in mind with this piece of legislation is that the 40,000 square foot footprint that it currently references, that is already allowed if the farm is composting manure or their own materials generated on the farm. So the big change that this piece of legislation does is it says that that same 40,000 square foot footprint could also be used for bringing in food scraps. And so we have heard from various farms that they're not currently able to generate enough food scraps on their own site to be able to get the right mix of greens and browns to make high quality compost. So it's not drastically expanding most of the footprints, because right now, if a farmer is just doing the manure, which could include off-site manure, they are allowed to do that 40,000 square foot. This big change for this bill is that if they are accepting food scraps under current regulations, they are brought down to 5,000 square feet. So this would put food scraps at the same playing field, if you will, as manure. But then it also includes those couple of reporting requirements that we in the environmental community did feel satisfied some of our concerns.
And Emily, what are those reporting requirements?
So it's tracking of the offsite material, and you have to say how much you're taking, and then you have to keep those records for 3 years. And then the other one is there were concerns that you would have piles of unincorporated waste. And so the bill also includes that it would have to be incorporated into an active pile or mixed with carboniferous material within 24 hours. So it's just a small guardrail to make sure that it's not going to be a problem of somebody accepting more waste than they can handle. They have to actively be incorporating it, but really it's getting the farmers that green material, that food scrap material, to help them make the right mix of compost.
Okay. And Tower, if I could just go back to you and say, I assume that from NDE's position, these additional reporting requirements, from your point of view, still aren't sufficient to guarantee, lack of a better term, sort of the integrity of the operation, given the fact that it's accepting food scraps from offsite.
Yes, so there wouldn't be a mechanism for us upfront to know if there was contamination in that food material, as well as, since these are going to be exempt from MDE permitting, we really don't know if there's a problem until we would receive a complaint. We just think that, we have a good permitting process, and we would like these facilities to receive the same permit as their peers do.
Okay. Delgado, do you have your hand
Yeah,
up?
Madam, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I think Emily and I are on the same page, but I wanted to understand what this carboniferous material is, and she's describing.
I'm not entirely sure. Maybe charcoal. I pulled that one from the bill. But really what we like about it is that it's, that immediate.
But I know
incorporation.
carbon is important to it. I mean, you have straw or you have something that manure is a good part of it. So thank you.
Oh, good boys.
Just very quickly, I'm just going back to this. So there's a couple things. Is there a fear that on-farm composting would somehow, which it doesn't sound like it would reach the capacity as a industrial or a company-wide farm or a composting establishment? Because it doesn't, one, sound like it would, and two, I guess the question is it because the larger companies that do this have some type of reporting that would speak to, it sounds like you're concerned about contamination?
And so there are commercial scale facilities that are permitted that are smaller than 40,000 square feet, just so you know. And then also there are, quite a few different things that you have to do in order to obtain the permit, as well as those reporting requirements. But, there's things that are required so that you have this permit, and it's like site prep, pad prep, the way that you incorporate the materials. And there's a lot of things that are built into our permit that we work with these different permittees to be in compliance.
Yeah, but they're already allowed to do it. So we're essentially expanding how much more material that they can actually compost. So I don't really,
So we would be.
I don't see the concern, considering they're not going to produce that much. And it doesn't sound like they're going to create a business from it other than capturing what's on, whether it's their farm or someone else's. I'm not sure I see the real concern, but I want to hear, but I don't feel like I hear a real concern.
Yeah, so there, if you have a farm, you could have a smaller farm, and that
Sure.
farm could then take on just food scraps if they wanted to, even if they weren't doing other composting practices. And so they could compost food scraps, and they could have this designated farm that would take food scraps from off-site, compost those on-site. They have the ability to collect a fee to take that food scrap, and then they could also,
But they could also do that now and no one would know. I mean, respectfully, like they could be doing that already. Just as, I mean,
I understand that they could be doing it
Potentially.
already. We like to help people be in compliance.
no, I hear you. I'm not suggesting, I know we've got to go actually. so-
Right, yeah. No, I appreciate the good discussion, but we should go since we have voting in person in 2 minutes. So we'll meet again maybe sometime Monday. So stay tuned. Continue the discussion on this, the VRF bill, and anything else that comes up. So, okay, well, thank you, everyone, and thanks to the advocates, and see everyone in committee in a couple of minutes.